Puerto Rico, also known as La Isla del Encanto. For many people, Puerto Rico is only a destination island where they can vacation for a while and then go back home. As a matter of fact, this has created a very large industry for the people of Puerto Rico, bringing in nearly $4 billion per year. But this island is more than just a vacation for me. This is actually a place I've called home. This is where I can actually trace my ancestors back to 400 years back to their settlement in the two towns they have been for 400 years. I was raised in a town called Yabucoa in a little community called Calabaza, but because of some circumstances, some of those things have changed. And though it's known for vacations, nearly half of Americans don't know that Puerto Ricans are actually American citizens by birthright. Morning Consult polled 2,200 Americans, which revealed that 46% of them didn't know Puerto Ricans were citizens if they were born in Puerto Rico. This is really problematic for people like me because we often get questions like, how are you in America? And do you have a green card? I've gotten them a lot, and it's really annoying and a little bit insulting because I'm an American citizen by birthright. Okay, so I want to discuss the history between America and Puerto Rico, the economic consequences of being a territory, and what's in store for Puerto Rico's future. Okay. Let's start from the beginning, when Christopher Columbus claimed the island called Borinquen in the name of Spain and renamed it San Juan Bautista after the son of their king and queen in 1493. He eventually distributed the Taino Indians, which are the indigenous Indians, as slaves, which led to many deaths, and many of them actually fled the island, as the New York Times explains. During the Spanish-American War, of which started in 1898, General Nelson Miles made a proclamation to Puerto Ricans. Lock.com published the statement in which a portion reads, "It is not our purpose to interfere with any existing laws and customs that are wholesome and beneficial to your people, so long as they conform to the rules of military administration, of order and justice, also promising liberty and admittance to the government of the United States." Many of the poor afterwards sided with the Americans during the war, attacking Spanish-owned property and businesses, and once the war was over, the Spanish ceded Puerto Rico and other territories to the United States in the Treaty of Paris. After the war was won, America completely ignored the parliament that Puerto Rico had built. America had invaded Puerto Rico not only because of Spain, but because its interest in developing sugar there, which disrupted the coffee industry, creating poverty, according to Lillian Guerrera, a professor at the University of Florida. In the 19th century, the U.S. began expanding with incorporated territories that had the ability to become states. For example, the Colorado Territory. History details that the insular cases of 1901 argued that Puerto Rico was full of alien races who couldn't understand Anglo-Saxon principles, so the Constitution didn't apply to us, and therefore we were denied statehood and labeled an unincorporated territory. Justice Henry Billings Brown wrote the decision on the first of these rulings, but even he said it was only for a time, meaning there was meant to be a change, which there has not been. In 1917, Puerto Ricans were finally granted citizenship out of convenience, because it was a month before before we entered World War I. It was signed by President Woodrow Wilson, and he signed the Jones-Shafroth Act nearly, he also signed a compulsory military service act that drafted 20,000 Puerto Ricans to serve at the Panama Canal. In 1951, Puerto Ricans were granted the right to draft their own constitution, making them a commonwealth under their own constitution in 1952. As a commonwealth unincorporated territory, we get no senators, no representatives in the House, and only a vote in the primary elections, not in the presidential elections. We get to send one delegate called the resident commissioner to Congress who has a voice but absolutely no vote, though we must still abide by the laws and decisions made there. Now, what has being a territory meant for Puerto Rico? Well, economically, there have been a couple of downsides. In 1976, in Puerto Rico, Section 936 of the tax code granted the U.S. corporations tax exemptions from income originating in U.S. territories, according to taxfoundation.org. This attracted a lot of big companies and created jobs for thousands, nearly 160,000 in fact. Though it allowed for Puerto Rican economy to flourish, it actually accounted for a large tax deficit in the 1980s and 90s. Because of this, in the 1990s, under the Clinton administration, a legislation was passed to phase out Section 936 over a 10-year period, which ended in 2006, which coincidentally was the start of the deep recession in Puerto Rico. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with the Jones Act. It was a little controversial because of the hurricane, which we will be talking about later. It's actually known as the Jones Act, but is called the Merchant Marine Act of 1920. This actually was an act that required all goods ferried between U.S. ports to be carried on ships built, owned, and operated by Americans. This was used to help create jobs during World War I and under the intentions of adding national security during the wartime. This actually resulted in a rise in prices in Puerto Rico because these ships are so much more expensive than foreign ones, especially because they import 85% of the produce brought into Puerto Rico. A study from the New York Federal Reserve found that a shipping from East Coast to Puerto Rico cost $363, while the same shipment of a foreign ship to the Dominican Republic would only cost $1,504. Foreign ships also would still be cheaper even if they took a longer route than American ships. The University of Puerto Rico revealed that the island lost $537 million per year because of this act. This act doesn't really affect the mainland, which are the 48 states, because it's so much faster to transport, so much faster and cheaper to transport goods by rails and trucks. Being a territory also caused untaxable jobs. Puerto Rico has one of the largest underground job sectors in the U.S., with experts saying that they account for about a third of the island's economy, making it untaxable. So another thing that caused an economic downfall was Puerto Rico being exempt from Chapter 9 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code. Chapter 9 allows for protections against creditors while it develops and negotiates plans to restructure its debt, explained by uscourts.org. Now, WUFT.org informs that the Economic Stability Act, also known as PROMESA, which allowed for similar protections from creditors, but expired in last May, so Puerto Rico had no choice but to ask for bankruptcy, which making it the largest municipal bankruptcy since Detroit, which is only 18 billion. We are now in the 70 billion. Now, these are just a couple of factors that led to the economic downfall, which resulted in an unemployment rate of 10.1, with a population of only 3.4 million people, as opposed to the United States average of 4.2 from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The poverty rate in Puerto Rico is also 43.5%, and a medium household income is only $19,350, as opposed to the U.S. poverty rate, which is only 13.5, and a medium household income at $56,516. Income is nearly half on the island for the same job on the mainland, causing many Puerto Ricans to come here. More live here right now than actually live on the island. On the mainland, actually 4.1 million live here, and only 3.4 live in Puerto Rico. Now, Numbeo.com compared Puerto Rico to Orlando in terms of cost of living. And in terms of cost of living, Puerto Rico is actually $1,000 less than Orlando, but we also have less than half of the income and making our cost of living higher. Puerto Rico also has an implemented tax of nearly 12%, which is one of the highest in America considering cost of living and low medium incomes. Now, one of the recent factors that led to economic downfall, it was actually Hurricane Maria. So these two pictures are actually from my hometown. One of them are plantain trees that were completely wiped out, and I will also talk about that in a little bit. And the other one is a strip mall that I used to go to when I was a child. It's completely gone. It was flooded and the roofs are gone. There was actually a pretzel place that I used to go to, and that's not there anymore. Okay. So though it causes strain in our community, it can cause so much more change. So we don't know what can come from Hurricane Maria. Thousands of Puerto Ricans have already left the island, and many more plan on leaving because of all of the destruction, which is going to put another strain on the economy. You can't fix the island without people, and you can't fix the debt without taxing the people. So according to the New York Times, during the hurricane, the Jones Act was only waived for 10 days. And the 10 days wasn't really helpful because there was no way to distribute the food or the water because we had no trucks, we had no truck drivers, and you couldn't really go anywhere because there was so much destruction. Because of the storm, there's an estimated $700 million loss in crops that could take up to a year to return to normal production. Puerto Rico was already importing 85% of its produce under the Jones Act, and now must add basic foods to the already large import. There's also been a lot of talk about the reconstruction of the infrastructure in Puerto Rico, many suggesting building with renewable sources. GQ reported that Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, has begun plans on sending Tesla solar panels and battery packs that most recently to a children's hospital in San Juan, emphasizing that there will be more aid sent to Puerto Rico from his company. Now, what could all of this mean for statehood? Not much. Because considering the racist origin of our status as an unincorporated territory rather than a state, it's not looking well. The island has had 5 referendums in regard to its relationship to the U.S. They have voted on whether to stay a commonwealth, become a state, and gain independence and become its own country. Though in the past, many of the people have voted against statehood, this past June, the New York Times reported 97% out of only a 23% turnout voted for statehood. CNN quotes Governor Ricardo Rosselló saying, "We will now take these results to Washington with the strong support of not only a duty-executed electoral exercise, but also a contingency of a national and international observers who can attest to the fact that the process was fair, well-organized, and democratic. From today going forward, the federal government will no longer be able to ignore the voice of the majority of the American citizens in Puerto Rico. It would be highly contradictory for Washington to demand democracy in other parts of the world and not respond to legitimate rights to self-determination that was exercised today in the American territory of Puerto Rico." Unfortunately, Congress doesn't usually respond to these referendums, considering there was one in 2012, which they did nothing about. And as of now, Congress has done nothing about this past referendum in June. Now, once again, to many people, La Isla del Encanto is now La Isla del Espanto because of the rise in crime and falling economy driving people away. To conclude, I'd just like to state that I'm not saying that the relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico has always been negative, because it did give me the opportunity to be here, and it did give my family the opportunity to come here and start a new life. But what about the people who can't afford to leave Puerto Rico? Or what about the people who refuse to leave their homes? How can we be happy with being a territory when we must leave our land to experience citizenship to its fullest extent? How can we be satisfied with having virtually no role in making the laws that affect us and our already suffering economy? Thank you.
Questions?
No questions.